being held against their will to go and try to rescue those people. So I think this is really awesome. So before I get a little bit into your backstory, the one thing that does bring to mind is that I had Craig Sawyer on the podcast, and I know you know Craig, and you were actually in the documentary. That's where I first kind of actually came to see you guys in the documentary Contraland that he did, which was really great, kind of shining a light on what's going on in Thailand and around there. But the thing that this brings to mind, and maybe this is kind of an esoteric thing or just kind of a side note, but it does bring to mind kind of, again, maybe this kind of American sentimentality toward pacifism when you're dealing with children, especially. It kind of changes the game. How can it not, for a moral person, especially a Christian, to say, all right, like let's put to rest this kind of sentimental notion about what needs to be done about this stuff, and let's actively pursue it, and let's fight against it, literally fight against it. And so maybe this is a foolish question because you probably haven't had much of a moral dilemma here, especially when you're dealing with children. But how have you kind of squared that round hole of being a Christian, but also encouraging people towards not only self-defense but actively fighting against something?
Yeah. So one of the things that we always kind of look at is, you even look in the Bible, I guess it's about the idea of self-defense, of self-protection. So one of the things that we're doing in this, especially in rescuers, is we're not teaching them going in with, nobody's going in and kicking doors in with guns blazing and, popping John Wick style kind of things. It's very much undercover. It's very much going in as a buyer. It's going in, and then you're building relationships, you're finding out connections, and then you bring the police, the human trafficking police, along with you, and then you do a raid if that's what's called for, or you can do what's called soft rescue, where you actually build relationships with the kids, and then once you have the trust and they trust them enough, then you can reveal who you are and you say, this is, we can get you out, kind of thing. And so those are the two ways, either with a raid or with that. So the self-defense and that we're teaching is, or the hand-to-hand we're teaching is for self-defense, is like when things go bad. And so if you connect to that with the Bible, Christ says, hey, you have a sword? If you don't, go out and buy one, right? Sell your cloak and go buy one, right? And that wasn't a big Roman, stinking battle sword. It was a dagger. It was something that was made for protection. It was made for like self-defense. It was like be a handgun in today's kind of society. So that's the idea of it, is that it's for defense, and God is for that. God is for protection of life. God is for the weak, right? It's to stand up to defend the fatherless, defend the oppressed. Those are the things that God's heart is for, especially for children. Is that God's heart is for these children that are suffering and hurting and being abused and used every day. And God's heart is for them. And so and it talks about throughout the Bible, rescuing people from the wicked, dealing with the wicked, dealing with, bringing people out of oppression from those people. And so, yeah, I would say that it squares really easy for me in my mind and in my heart to do almost whatever is necessary to get these kids free. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of how I view it. I've never really had much pushback from churches. A couple of times, people have asked about, those kind of situations. But most people kind of can square that pretty easily, at least in the circles that we run.
Yeah. Yeah, as they should. I mean, the reality is that we can talk about our holy civic duty of voting, and we can talk about preaching the gospel, and we can talk about praying until in the next room over there's a child being molested, and then you have an obligation to get involved in the culture war, or to get involved in what's going on in the world beyond just sitting back passively. Now you have to be an active participant if you're a Christian in good conscience, and to go in there, and righteousness demands in that situation that you get your hands dirty.
And that's one thing that we tell people all the time, like, hey, we're all about evangelism. We're all about, we want to be in sharing the gospel, and we can, a lot of people could get together and they say, I can bring you over to Thailand and we can go to every bar and every place in Thailand and hand out tracts and tell people Jesus loves them and all this stuff. We can do that. And you can come to one of these kids and say, hey, there's a tract. Hey, Jesus loves you. Let me pray for you. And then they look at you and go, oh, Jesus loves me. Well, where was he at last night when I was getting raped 100 times? And how are we going to answer that? Like, oh man, how can we answer that question. Well, these rescuers can. The people that going in can answer the question. They say, well, I'm risking my life to get you out of that. And so then they begin to hear the gospel. Once you've put yourself out there and put yourself at risk to bring somebody else out, they listen to you about spiritual things as well as physical things. So so that's what we kind of try to challenge people to do.
Yeah, you're the hands and feet of Jesus right there. So you say, where was Jesus when this? And you say, well, he was with me when I was there with you.
Catch new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Uberman for free right now by going to YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Simply type Indie Thinker with Reed Uberman in the search bar and click on my face. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to stay informed when a new episode drops.